I'm Eleni Jokos in Dubai, and this is CNN.
In 1863. Our coverage continues now with one Mr. Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. I'll see you tomorrow.
Happening now, the January 6th Select Committee just revealed new details about its hearing tomorrow. Aides are promising more evidence that former President Trump was involved in a fake electoral plot, part of his bid to overturn the 2020 presidential results. Witnesses will include the Georgia Secretary of State, who was pressured by Trump to, quote, find favorable votes. Also tonight, President Biden says he's considering a pause in the federal gas tax. He's aiming for a decision this week as Americans are clamoring for relief from record prices at the pump. And U.S. airlines are trying to untangle a holiday weekend mess due to thousands of canceled flights, with staffing shortages and bad weather causing chaos. Will air travel be a nightmare all summer? We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. Aides say the January 6th Select Committee plans to reveal new information about the origins and the scope of former President Trump's direct efforts to pressure state officials to overturn the 2020 presidential election, including his role in a fake electoral scheme. CNN's Jessica Schneider has more on what to expect tomorrow.
The January 6th committee getting ready to shift its focus to Trump's role in a scheme to submit fake electors, all in a bid to overturn the 2020 election. They'll call 3 Republicans on Tuesday, all expected to testify about how Trump pressured them to overturn Trump's loss at the polls in their states. Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger will talk about this phone call with the former president just days before January 6th.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
Raffensperger's chief operating officer, Gabe Sterling, will also appear. And from Arizona, the Republican Speaker of the state's House will testify as well. Rusty Bowers said Trump asked him directly to replace the electors in the state with a rogue slate.
I talked to him a couple of times, and they had asked me to take some steps that I just wouldn't do, and I told him I voted for him. I've campaigned for him, but I told him I wasn't going to do anything illegal.
Bowers also received emails from Ginny Thomas urging him to set aside Biden's election win by replacing Democratic electors with a Republican slate. The committee has asked Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, to testify. Ginny Thomas issued a short response to a conservative publication saying, "I can't wait to clear up misconceptions. I look forward to talking to them." Thomas was the only justice to vote against releasing White House records to the committee in January. Now, Schiff says Thomas should recuse himself from any future cases involving the committee.
Justice Thomas, to avoid even the appearance of impropriety, should have nothing to do with any cases relating to January 6th. Particularly regarding our investigation.
A new poll out from ABC News after 3 hearings shows nearly 6 in 10 Americans believe former President Trump should be prosecuted. It's a case the committee is making.
The president is guilty of knowing what he did, seditious conspiracy. What we're presenting before the American people certainly would rise to a level of criminal involvement by a president.
But so far, DOJ refusing to comment, though prosecutors recently complained that the committee's refusal to hand over all of its records complicates their job. Committee member Zoe Lofgren says the dispute could be resolved as early as July once the hearings conclude. And meanwhile, Schiff is leaving the door open to subpoena Vice President Mike Pence.
There are still key people we have not interviewed that we would like to. We're not taking anything off the table in terms of witnesses who have not yet testified.
And also scheduled to testify tomorrow, Shaye Moss. She's a former election worker who Trump actually accused of carrying out a fake ballot scheme in Fulton County, Georgia. Committee aides are saying that she will speak about the threats that she received as the result of Trump's false claims. Wolf?
All right, Jessica, thank you. Jessica Schneider reporting. Let's dig deeper right now. Joining us, CNN's chief legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, CNN's senior political analyst, Kirsten Powers, a columnist for USA Today, and CNN's senior commentator, John Kasich, the former Republican governor of Ohio. Jeffrey, how important is it to hear from these election officials, some of whom actually spoke directly with then President Trump?
I think Georgia is the weakest part of Donald Trump's defense. He's got a real problem in Georgia because, in other areas, the president can say, look, the former president can say, look, I had legal advice that we were just trying to get all the votes counted. But when you look at when you start with the tape, the audio tape of his statement to Raffensperger, where he says, I need 11,780 votes. That's not about counting all the votes. That's not about getting accurate results. That's about getting enough votes to win. And that's a very different scenario than one where he can claim good faith. So I think Georgia is really one where there's an active criminal investigation already underway. And I think that's one where he's very vulnerable.
Kirsten, how will the committee make the case that this wasn't just one state, this was a widespread, coordinated scheme by the former president?
Well, I think the broader picture of this entire, these hearings is laying out that this was a multi-pronged effort and that had various, tranches where the president was going around and trying to overturn the election. And so tomorrow it will be focused on looking at these states, Arizona and Georgia, where he couldn't really have been more explicit, as Jeffrey's saying. This doesn't, if you're wondering what his intent was, well, his intent was quite clear. His intent was find votes that don't exist, whether it's saying I want this number of votes or whether it's saying get a new slate of electors, but do something to change the outcome of the election. Joe Biden has won the election. Do something to overturn that and make it so I won. That is clearly election fraud at a minimum, and he puts him in legal jeopardy in all sorts of different ways.
Governor Kasich, as you heard, the committee isn't ruling out asking the former Vice President Mike Pence to speak to them. The mob was chanting, as we all know, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. Should he step forward and actually share what he knows about that day?
Well, I think he should, Wolf. I wouldn't bet a lot of money on the fact that he's going to do it. But I think what it would mean if he testified is he would be able to give some unique insight. Obviously, he'd been talking to the president. He was there inside the Capitol, 40 feet away from a raging mob. And I think most important, it would draw a lot of attention. I mean, what the committee needs are a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people who, and this would stoke great interest. And as it stoked great interest, then you might have even more people beginning to say, yeah, you know what, Trump didn't win. The guy's out of it here. And that's the most positive thing about having Mike Pence testify. I do not think he will, though.
Interesting. Jeffrey, nearly 6 in 10 Americans say they believe former President Trump should face criminal charges for his role in January 6th, according to a new poll by ABC News. But the Attorney General has to weigh other factors, doesn't he?
Right. I'm very glad I live in a country where we don't prosecute people based on popular demand. And I think it's a good thing that the Justice Department is conservative, that is with a lowercase c, about bringing criminal cases, because it's a very serious thing to try to put someone in prison. And we should only do it if there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that someone committed a crime. However, given what has gone on in this committee, there is certainly a basis for a criminal investigation, not just of President Trump, but also of John Eastman. How that result will actually, how that investigation will turn out, I don't know. But certainly there does seem to be enough evidence, not in the poll, but in the evidence presented in public, that an investigation needs to go forward here.
Let me make a quick turn. Governor Kasich, over the weekend, the Republican Party of Texas actually adopted a resolution rejecting President Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 presidential election. They also call being gay, quote, an abnormal lifestyle choice. What does that say about today's GOP? And I ask you, you're a Republican.
Yeah. Well, Wolf, what I can tell you is what happened in Texas was a clown show. And I think, even clowns were embarrassed by what they saw down there. You know, it brings up one important thing, Wolf, for all people who are interested in common sense in politics. If you leave the field and you let the crazies, you let the people who are really extreme take control, then these are the kind of things you get. And it works on both sides, in both the Democratic and Republican Party in these primaries. If you let the extremes dictate who the nominees are, what the policies are, then you're going to end up in extremes and things that don't make sense and further polarize the country. So what happened down there was a bunch of people who were very extreme ran the program, they jammed through whatever they wanted, and it's an embarrassment. Think about what they did to that Afghan veteran, Cawthorn, who was mocked down there. You know, and John Cornyn, who's trying to cut a reasonable deal on guns. He was booed. It's just crazy. That was the clown show. That's what that was. Wolf,
Kirsten, this was the Republican Party of Texas, not just a bunch of wild guys. This is the actual Republican Party in Texas, Kirsten.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, in a way, to call it a clown show, in a way, sort of makes it sound like they're fringe people, right? Which in the past would absolutely be true. But unfortunately, this is becoming much more mainstream of the Republican Party. And this is scary stuff. And this is, you know, if you're a gay person living in that state, how are you going to feel if you have a gay child? How are you going to feel? I mean, this is so far outside the mainstream of how people think today, and certainly how a political party takes a position. They're extremist on guns, obviously, you know, booing Senator Cornyn, you know, who is as conservative as they come, which is what this always comes back to, is that even very conservative people are, if they step one step out of line, are ostracized.
Yeah, good point. All right, guys, thank you very, very much. Just ahead, one of the two Republicans on the House January 6th Select Committee warns of political violence around the 2024 election and reveals the death threat he and his family actually received. We're going to talk about it with former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson. He's standing by live. We'll discuss when we come back.
Sunday on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those using their platforms for good.
It's just so needed, and we have a lot more to do.
Join us as we shine a light on some familiar faces.
I have gotten a front row seat to what heroism is.
Turning words into action.
It makes us human.
If we still care, there is hope.
CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett. Sunday.
It's totally covered in solar, also the side panels, and we have this patented proprietary solar technology which we developed over the last couple of years. And this vehicle here is recharging on average per day 10 miles. In a week it's 70 miles through the sun. Additionally, of course, I have a battery on board. I can recharge it just as a regular electric vehicle, but we have this convenient feature. It's taking away this fear of recharging, this fear of range anxiety, and making it more convenient, energy efficient, and you're saving costs. Energy is coming from the sun for free. And the second pillar is selling and licensing this technology to B2B customers. Trucks, train, buses, camper van. There's huge potential in this market to make the whole logistic industry more greener.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for a market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Today on CNN.
Our mission is to see this young generation of leaders growing up make change in the world. My name is Edlira Debrane, and I am the Communications Officer of Finnish School of Kosovo here in Kosovo, Europe. We created a Wall of Freedom, which is still in our halls. We organized a bake sale where we collected over 500 euros, which are going to be donated to an organization against domestic violence. I would say the one that we are most proud of is the Set in Stone Garden. For over a month, each student gathered rocks. We took these rocks, we wrote down our vows and pledges to end modern-day slavery, and then we took all those rocks outside in the middle of our schoolyard, and we spelled out My Freedom Day. So we had this really cool shot where everybody was shouting out My Freedom Day, sort of like a symbolic way to say that our pledges are actually set in stone and they will remain there forever. This, I believe, has made a very long-lasting impact on them, and it's something that they have vowed to actually take on in the following months. You'll see them around the school still doing other things for My Freedom Day.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
GOP Congressman Adam Kinzinger, one of only 2 Republicans on the House January 6th Select Committee, says he and his family have received a death threat, and he warns of chaos and violence as the 2024 election approaches. Listen to this.
This threat that came in, it was mailed to my house. We got it a couple days ago, and it threatens to execute me as well as my wife and 5-month-old child. I've never seen or had anything like that. There is violence in the future, I'm going to tell you. And until we get a grip on telling people the truth, we can't expect any differently.
All right, let's discuss this and more with former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson. Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us. Do you agree with that warning that there's more politically motivated violence to come?
Well, first, the death threat sent to Representative Kinzinger is very serious. I hope it's aggressively investigated by the FBI and the Capitol Police. If it's any comfort to the congressman and his family, the overwhelming majority of statements like that are all talk and no action issued by deranged cowards. Now, in terms of the threats around our democratic process, our election process, we are now in a tense environment, Wolf. I looked at the last DHS bulletin that was issued a couple of weeks ago, which warned of all manner of threats, ranging from violent extremism to those who harbor personal grievances. That's an obvious reference to mass shootings like Uvalde. Whenever the American public reads a statement like this, when I was in office, I always made an effort to try to also convey what is expected of the public, because the public reads something like this, they're concerned, and they want to know, what can I do? And I think the answer, reading between the lines of the warnings being put out, is law enforcement has to be vigilant. Americans should continue to go to public events around the holidays like July 4th. We obviously must continue to participate in our democracy, vote. We should all continue to vote, but be aware, be careful, and if you see something, obviously say something.
Yeah, and as I know, he's not the only member of the January 6th Select Committee getting these kinds of horrible, horrible threats. Congressman Kinzinger also is raising the alarm that the 2024 election could be a mess with, quote, people that don't believe in democracy, authoritarians, he calls them, in key election roles. Do you fear, Mr. Secretary, other politicians will try to mimic the Trump playbook?
Yes, I do. And we're beginning to see signs of that now. The reminder that those of us with a public voice, a responsible public voice, has to be words have consequences. People do listen to their leaders. And so responsible, reasoned rhetoric at a time like this is vital. Outlandish vocabulary, words do have consequences. They make unacceptable behavior acceptable, and for the deranged among us, violence inevitable. So words do have consequences. We should all, however, continue to be careful, be vigilant, and by all means continue to participate in our democratic process in a peaceful, orderly way.
While I have you, I want to ask you about an important article you wrote, an op-ed article in USA Today. You're calling for Democrats, your fellow Democrats, to embrace a platform of public safety. Why do you see this as a weak spot for Democrats supposedly being accused of being soft on crime?
The reality is that rising levels of crime affect urban, suburban areas of our country more than rural areas. Put another way, it affects communities that are principally Democratic strongholds in the big cities and in many suburban areas. This issue, therefore, is vital and intensely personal to a lot of Democratic voters, which is why I think it's crucial that in our Democratic platforms, and I'm a Democrat, we make public safety the centerpiece of what it is we need to do to address people's concerns. This is not just simply a political issue. This is an intensely personal issue for a lot of people. I know a lot of people who have progressive values, but who are afraid to, for example, ride the New York City subway. So history shows that for those of us in the Democratic Party, if we fail to address this, it'll be the void will be filled by extremist rhetoric on the other side that does no more than frighten us and divide us.
The former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up, Americans hit hard by record fuel prices may get a break. We'll have the latest on the gas tax holiday President Biden is considering and how much of a difference it might make. Stay with us.
When you invest in people, you give them the opportunity to be more. With up to 20 million young people joining the African workforce each year, empowering the next generation has never been more important. Access Bank's Project LEAD has equipped over 90,000 students with leadership training. And our Pitchathon scheme invests in female entrepreneurs, helping them realize their vision. Access. More than banking.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
The work that continues, who we are today, and what we can become.
This is journalism that reflects the world we live in.
I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? Or would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Aaron Burnett out front, tonight on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
This is the tiger track, so I'm doing the measurement to make sure this is real tiger track. I would say this is a healthy one adult tiger. For example, Hue Khai Khang right now, we are the biggest home of Indo-Chinese tiger population.
I'm Paula Hancock in Seoul. This is CNN.
President Biden says he's nearing a decision aimed at easing the pain at the pump that Americans are feeling right now, big time. Let's go to our White House correspondent, MJ Lee. MJ, as Americans are paying record gas prices, tell us about the options President Biden is exploring, including the possibility of a federal gas tax holiday.
Yeah, Wolf, there's no question that record high gas prices remain such a stubborn problem for the president. We've heard him saying in recent weeks numerous times that dealing with inflation remains his #1 domestic priority. And keep in mind the bigger context here too, right? The president has recently pulled on the number of limited levers that he already has at his disposal. The biggest one, of course, being tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve more than once. And that hasn't had the effect of meaningfully lowering gas prices. And now this morning, the president saying he is considering supporting a pause on the federal gas tax. What this would do is effectively save people around 18 cents per gallon when they go to fill up their gas tanks. Take a listen to what he said this morning.
Yes, I'm considering.
How soon can we expect a decision?
Well, I hope I have a decision based on data I'm looking for by the end of the week.
Will you be Now, important to note that this is not a unilateral decision that the president can take. This would require action from Congress. And so far, we've not seen a lot of traction for lawmakers to go down this route. Another thing that the president said to reporters this morning was that he's considering gas rebate cards. But I think it's important to note here, too, that CNN has previously reported that this is an idea that officials do have concerns about because it is difficult to administer and essentially track how people would spend the money that are on these cards. Now, the last thing that I would note is that the president also said he did have a conversation this morning with Larry Summers. This is the former Treasury Secretary official, of course, who has been predicting that a recession is likely. The president pushing back on that idea and saying that he doesn't believe that a recession is inevitable. Wolf.
MJ Lee at the White House, thank you. The national average for gas prices here in the United States just took a slight, keyword slight, dip after months of climbing higher and higher. CNN's Matt Egan is on the streets of New York joining us right now. Matt, the average price of gas is just under $5 a gallon nationally right now. Should Americans expect the price to keep dropping?
Well, Wolf, gas prices are finally going lower a little bit. The national average at $4.98 a gallon. That is down 4 cents from the record high set just last week. And we could see prices go a bit lower because oil prices have gone down significantly due to all of those recession fears. But I don't really think anyone's going to be celebrating with prices at these levels because it's still 39 cents higher today to fill up your tank than it was a month ago. Now, as MJ Lee just mentioned, the White House is still deliberating whether or not to back a federal gas tax holiday. And it is easy to see why that would be popular because it would pretty quickly cause gas prices to go down by as much as 18 cents a gallon. But there's also some drawbacks that could prevent it from getting through Congress. One, this doesn't really do anything to address the supply problem. Two, it actually supports demand at a time when demand can't keep up with supply. It would also sap federal funding for repairing and building highways. And one other problem here, Wolf, is that once you implement a gas tax holiday, it would become pretty hard and pretty politically unpopular to reverse it.
Yes, it would. It seems also, on another sensitive issue, Matt, that the Fed isn't done raising interest rates. Could loans get even more expensive? What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, Wolf, the Fed is signaling that its war on inflation is really just getting started. Last week, the Fed announced its biggest interest rate increase since 1994 in a bid to try to get inflation under control. And then over the weekend, a top Fed official said the Fed is going, quote, all in to try to get prices back under control. And he endorsed a similar sized rate hike at next month's meeting. This means higher borrowing costs for families, credit cards, car loans, student debts, and the big one, of course, is mortgages. Mortgage rates are going up at the fastest pace since 1987. A year ago, average mortgage rate was around 3%. Today, it is rapidly approaching 6%. And so what does that really mean? Well, let me show you. If you look at monthly mortgage payments on a home that was $250,000, those payments are $335 higher today than they were a year ago. On a $500,000 home, those payments are $670 higher. And again, those are monthly payments, and those payments, it's that extra money, it's not going to get you an extra bedroom or an extra bathroom. It's really all going to the bank. Wolf, I think this is another reminder of how, while inflation is very painful, getting inflation back under control, that could be painful as well.
Yeah, it certainly could. That's real money we're talking about. Matt Egan, thank you very much. Just ahead, a holiday weekend travel nightmare here in the United States. Thousands of flights canceled as the U.S. sees the busiest travel day of the year so far. So what does it mean for the upcoming 4th of July holiday weekend? Stand by.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces. I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on. No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered. There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Capital A, a Malaysian conglomerate best known for its low-cost airline, AirAsia, is going big on a new tech venture, a super app. The platform lets you reserve flights and hotels, as well as book rideshare and deliver food.
The idea for a super app is to become the center of the ecosystem. 80% of business revenue is still generated out of travel, and that gives us a very powerful positioning of our app today.
Growth plans for AirAsia's super app include Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Singapore. But the company has entered a market filled with steep competition. Southeast Asia is home to big-name super apps like Singapore-based Grab and Indonesia's GoTo Group.
I think one of the biggest point of difference of AirAsia Super App versus many other competitors out there is we own the infrastructure.
My name is Khadija Behzad. I'm the founder and CEO of Meet the Locals.
Meet the Locals is a social Emirati tourism company. We are specialized in Emirati culture. We design and deliver authentic Emirati experiences. I noticed that many visitors are coming to the UAE and they are visiting the different attractions and they are leaving without getting the chance of meeting local people. We as locals or Emiratis in the UAE, we are only 10 to 11% of the total population. Locals can give deeper information about the culture, so tourists will get the information from the source. It's important for us to create such programs in order to interact with expats, whether they are tourists or residents.
Tonight, U.S. airlines are struggling with a huge backlog of passengers after thousands of flights were canceled over the holiday weekend, leaving unlucky travelers stranded, and that's sparking deep concern about the upcoming July 4th holiday. CNN aviation correspondent Pete Muntean has details.
Wolf, many people are still trying to get home even after this huge weekend of cancellations. You know, these new cancellation numbers are huge, but the cause of this is not new. We've been reporting for months about how airlines got smaller because of the pandemic. There are massive flight crew shortages, and the deck of cards really comes tumbling down when summer weather strikes. In fact, there were bad thunderstorms on Thursday, and airlines have been trying to get back to normal ever since. More than 1,700 flight cancellations nationwide on Thursday, according to FlightAware. More than 1,400 on Friday. Airlines really tried to play catch-up unsuccessfully on Saturday and Sunday. More than 800 flight cancellations on Saturday, more than 900 on Sunday. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby just spoke to our Richard Quest about this, and he pinned some of the blame on all these cancellations on the federal government. He says the Federal Aviation Administration needs to help by hiring and adding more air traffic controllers. This is coming as so many people are traveling, not only the long Juneteenth holiday weekend, but also Father's Day weekend. This could be one of the busiest travel weekends since the start of the pandemic. 2.38 million people passed through security at America's airports on Sunday, according to TSA. 2.44 million people at airports nationwide on Friday. That is the highest number we have seen since Thanksgiving 2021. This all comes with an urgent message from Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. He told airlines last week that they need to get their schedule acts together with the July 4th travel period on the horizon. In fact, he himself had his own flight canceled between New York and Washington. He had to drive like so many people had to pivot to after their flights were canceled this weekend. Wolf?
CNN's Pete Muntean at Reagan National Airport. Thank you. This holiday weekend has seen a fresh wave of mass shootings all across the United States as well, including right here in Washington, D.C., the latest of dozens since the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. CNN's Brian Todd is working the story for us.
This was an early sign in downtown D.C. last night that tensions were building. Panic. People being trampled after hundreds had gathered for an unpermitted concert. Later, despite a heavy police presence in the area, gunfire broke out. A 15-year-old boy killed. 3 others, including a police officer, wounded. The police chief and mayor frustrated with the gun violence in their city.
There's a theme that you see here: illegal firearms in the hands of people who should not have them. This is unacceptable.
With guns involved and with our police managing a crowd, on site, somebody used a gun, and a child is dead.
In Harlem, 9 people were shot, one of them killed, after people had gathered for a midnight barbecue. The deceased victim, 21-year-old college basketball star Darius Lee, his sister, distraught.
Humble, star, basketball player, don't bother nobody.
The weekend shootings in New York and Washington are among the 278 mass shootings recorded so far this year in America, including 65 more since the Uvalde school shooting, with 349 shot, 69 of them killed. CNN and the Gun Violence Archive define a mass shooting as one that injures or kills 4 or more people.
Violent crime has definitely been heading up. We've definitely seen a significant upturn in big cities in particular in the last about 4 or 5 years now.
In Chicago, it was another horrific weekend. Officials saying at least 32 people were shot, 3 of them fatally. The causes for these spikes? Criminologists we spoke to point to the proliferation of guns on America's streets. They say gun violence typically goes up in the warmer months, with more people out and about interacting with others. And they point to overwhelmed, understaffed police departments, as well as a lack of trust between the public and police.
When the public starts to doubt the efficacy of the police and their fairness, and they stop reporting crimes to the police, you get into the situation that some criminologists call self-help, where people are more likely to, instead of calling the police, they're more likely to solve things on their own.
This all comes with a backdrop of a federal government seemingly unable to stem this tide. The U.S. Congress continuing to struggle negotiating new gun safety laws. And a Supreme Court decision looms, the court possibly about to strike down a New York law which places restrictions on carrying a concealed weapon outside the home. And criminologist Gary Lafree points to another disturbing factor in the proliferation of some of these crimes in America. Lafree and his colleagues at the University of Maryland researched the numbers of clearance rates for homicides and other violent crimes in cities like Baltimore, Washington, and other places. They are shockingly low. Many of these crimes, Wolf, in D.C., Baltimore, and elsewhere, simply not getting solved.
Yeah, you're right. Brian Todd reporting from Washington. Thank you. Coming up, millions of American children under age 5 can start getting COVID vaccines tomorrow. But many parents still have lots and lots of questions. We have some answers when we come back.
コーヒーの持つ力って人と人をつなぐ力だと思ってて、うちの会社のビジョンっていうのは日本のコーヒーといえばフィロコフィアってなることなんですよ。からそれを達成するには世界に向けた通販が必要だったんですよね。
I'm Vedika Sood in New Delhi, and this is CNN.
We share this place, we all belong.
is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Is this about being conservative or is it about control?
CNN investigates deep in the pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.
U.S. pharmacies are announcing plans to vaccinate young children now that vaccines have been authorized for kids under 5 and as young as 6 months. CVS, for example, says it will start administering doses as early as tomorrow, with other chains clearly to follow. Let's get some more from CNN medical analyst Dr. Leana Wen. Dr. Wen, thanks for joining us. What's the first step for parents right now? Should they jump on these appointments or actually make a call or visit their pediatrician first?
Oh, I think there are a lot of parents who are ready to go, who have made the decision to vaccinate their children. I definitely think it's worth checking in with your pediatrician's office, although many of them may not have the vaccine in store. And if you are really eager, check with your local pharmacies. Many of them are not going to have appointments for especially young kids, for example, the 6-month to 2-year-old group. And so call your pharmacy, make sure that your kid and their age is going to be serviced by that particular pharmacy.
Yeah, that's really an important point. According to an April poll by the Kaiser Family Foundation, and I'm sure you've seen this, Dr. Wen, only 18% of parents of kids under 5 say they'll get this vaccine as soon as it becomes available. More parents, nearly 40%, say they'll wait and see. Do you expect to see slower vaccine uptake among this age group?
I do think that we should expect for there to be slower vaccine uptake, in part because the rollout is more complicated, because most kids are of this age range are used to getting their vaccines at their pediatrician's office, and it takes time for the vaccine to get there. That itself is a bottleneck. But yes, some parents are going to take the wait and see approach, and I actually think that that's fine, because there are so many parents very eager to get their kids vaccinated. I am among them, and many physician parents that I know are in this group as well. So I'd say let those who are so eager go first. Then we're going to get a lot more experience from these initial hundreds of thousands of children. And then I think a lot of people in that wait and see category are going to get off the fence and get their kids vaccinated once they see for themselves just how safe and effective these vaccines are.
As you can imagine, I'm getting swamped with a lot of questions from parents out there. What's your advice, Dr. Wen, to parents of kids who are about to turn 5? Should they wait to get the higher dose or get vaccinated now with the under 5 vaccine, a lower dose?
I'm in this category myself. My son turns 5 in August. We are deciding to go ahead with the vaccine now. And this is the CDC's recommendation as well. Do not wait. Get your child the vaccine now that corresponds to their current age. And then if they turn to their next birthday, if they turn 5, before their second dose or their third dose, if they end up getting Pfizer, they can still get the higher dose that corresponds to their next birthday. So don't wait. The one situation I would say that people can perhaps wait is if their child just recovered from COVID. If they just had COVID, I think it's reasonable to wait a couple of months because the chance of reinfection in that time period is very low.
Dr. Leana Wen, as usual, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Up next, new information coming in about 2 American volunteer fighters reportedly being held by Russian-backed separatists in Ukraine. We'll go live to Ukraine when we come back.
We're here at the home of one of the FSB team. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
What do you want the world to know?
People are so exhausted. Just going to help her carry this bag.
Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their stories.
Interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smirconish, Saturday on CNN.
try to be global and we try to be smart. And we try very hard to get both of those every week. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject, who will make you smarter, move you emotionally, who will kind of challenge your mind or move your heart. And that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
I'm Ben Wiedemann in Ukraine, and this is CNN.
So much of business travel now is mixed with leisure. People are working from abroad. But yes, certainly the consulting trips, the Monday through Thursday, they are back and happening. Consultants are back on the road, engineers who need to do those factory visits, people in sales. So it's not quite off a cliff like people thought. But I think especially once that testing requirement is lifted, and I think businesses will feel more comfortable sending people out. But it will come back, but it'll just look a little bit different than what it used to. Whenever that testing requirement's lifted, we're going to see a shoot up in demand, especially international. And we're projecting at the Point Sky that airfare is going to continue rising steadily into June. It might taper off, but we'll see. But in general, booking last minute is not a smart bet in 2022.
I'm Larry Medowo in Kigali, Rwanda, and this is CNN.
Russian state media says that 2 Americans fighting for Ukraine have been captured and are being held right now by Russian-backed separatists in Donetsk. CNN senior international correspondent